هي مهندسة واقتصادية وسياسية خبيرة ليس في مجال واحد بل في ثلاثة: الطاقة والأمن والمالية. في محطات سابقة من مسيرتها المهنية وضعت أطر تشريعية في دول ذات حساسية جيوسياسية، كما شاركت في الإعداد لطرح أرامكو وهو الأكبر في التاريخ. اليوم تتولى ليلى بنعلي وزيرة الانتقال الطاقي والتنمية المستدامة قيادة تحول الطاقة في المغرب، وتسهم في توجيه المملكة نحو نمو اقتصادي مستدام وتعزيز موقع المملكة كمورد أساسي للطاقة إلى أوروبا. A doctorate in economics, a master's in politics, and a degree in engineering. Your Excellency, this seems to me like a very well-planned route. Were you always intentional about your education and your career?
Oh, well, Siba, this is a very poignant question. Intentional, yes. I think very intentional to serve, to have an impact, because I think if I'm happy in my day-to-day life, in my job, and if I make other people happy and I have an impact on my environment, that will be my own well-being. That will be very important for my own well-being. So I think, it was, now that I reflect on it, it was, I think, very
So was public office always the destination? You've had a fantastic career journey. Were your eyes always on public office?
I think by construction, because I was always interested in sectors or ventures that would be at the confluence between politics and highly technical and very geopolitically oriented. So energy and defense and security were always part of my career path, if you may. So yes, I think public office was always not as an end point, but definitely as a mean to make an impact.
So it sounds like you landed in your place. Morocco is often cited as a success story, as a renewable energy success story, really. What is it that brought it there? What is it that makes this success?
Yeah, I mean, like I didn't land in Morocco after 25 years abroad by coincidence. I think Morocco's success story is also not a coincidence. It was, it's more than 30 years of experience in attracting private finance, international finance, and it's more than 15 years of experience in managing technology risks, geopolitical risks in the energy sector, because our energy strategy was launched by His Majesty back in 2009, and it's been the same stable, I called it the triangle: renewable energy, energy efficiency, and efficiency of resources, including water and other resources, and regional connectivity and integration. And it's the same triangle that has been stable since 2009, and a stable policy all the way through. So I think it's very important to, if Morocco is being defined today as a success story in that, I think it's really, I would like to pay tribute to first His Majesty for his enlightened vision and stability of the policy that he has given us. It's a major luxury for any energy minister or any finance minister or any economy minister to have a stable policy, especially in a very tumultuous world that we know today.
You have stated goals, the kingdom has stated goals of arriving at 52% of electricity generation from renewable energy. It's a big undertaking, no doubt. What are the long-term developmental goals that made you arrive at the 52%, at those limits that were put down?
Yeah, I think those targets of related to renewable energy efficiency, and regional integration, which are also very important targets as well, are very much the piece that will enable Morocco to escape the middle income trap of 3% GDP growth rates to 6% GDP growth rates. And it's, I would say, enshrined in, and you have the book in front of you, our new development model that we devised with the Moroccans, by the Moroccans, when His Majesty, may God assist him, told us the development model of the country is reaching its limits. Define the new development model of the country and how it will evolve. And energy was the first, if not the only, strategic bet of the country to escape the middle income trap and become, I would say, a powerhouse in the region. And on a 6% GDP growth rates, permeating into a total change in the society and a lifting of the social tissue of the country.
So, underscoring those ambitions to be a powerhouse in the region, for the kingdom, you also have ambitions to supply the EU with 50% of its needs of electricity. So, where do the priorities lie? Do these two agendas contradict somehow? Does one extract from the other? Does focusing on exporting energy to the EU, the investments that it takes to get there, take away from the developmental project?
No, I don't think there is. First, there is no ambition to export to anyone. I mean, you need to have an offtake contract with a pricing and a timeline to export, and you need to have that also to finance the infrastructure that will enable you to export. So for now, what we are talking about is a transition into making Morocco become sorry for the very simplistic definition, an electrostate. Why? Because we have the institutions in place to do that. We have the infrastructure in place to be the only corridor at the end of the day linking Africa, Europe, and the Atlantic Basin. And the whole point here, I think it's very important to realize that for the world to thrive in the longer term, Africa is a key solution. And I still remember the energy minister of Ukraine last week in the IEA energy security ministerial meeting saying, if Europe is serious about its energy security, which is an important part of its security, it has to invest in vertical corridors. A vertical corridor goes to North Africa. And in North Africa, you have Morocco being the only African country today interconnected electricity-wise and gas-wise with Europe and the Atlantic Basin through our ports as well. It's very important that we continue building the case for having the economies of scale to target, well, first and foremost, the Moroccan market, but also international markets for our green electrons, our green molecules, and our green metals and minerals, so that we decrease the costs of energy, primarily electricity, primarily for our citizens, primarily for the economic. It's the same story that happened in, let's say, Saudi Arabia or Qatar, when these countries that you know very well, SIBA, have invested massively in oil or gas to decrease the cost of their energy to primarily for their citizens and for the economic and social tissue of their countries. So the same story is happening today. You will have going forward few countries. I think you need a couple of conditions for that to happen, but we can talk about that later, especially on the technology front. But you have a few countries in the world that can actually emerge as the future electrostate for the world. But before we reach that, I think some of, as I tell my European counterparts, it takes two to tango. Yeah. So very concretely, if you want to have access to green electrons, green molecules, but more importantly, secure and stable. Morocco has demonstrated over 14 centuries, it is the second longest monarchy in the world, that sanctity of contracts is very important. So for us, having that stability is very important for the energy sector. If the world is serious about its energy security and its energy sustainability.
Internally, you also have an industrialization of the economy project. Does that in any way contradict with your decarbonization targets? We're sitting in the sustainability ministry now.
No, I think, we're sitting in the sustainable development department. And there is absolutely no contradiction, because in that case, you will not have energy, mining, and environment and sustainable development sitting in the same ministry. The main reason why His Majesty thought about that is to ensure that the industrialization of the country, the social transformation of the country is within a sustainable development track. And our national strategy for sustainable development is the tool for us to permeate, I would say, the different parts of the society and enable us to, when we reach, I hope, inshallah, the 6% GDP growth rate on a sustainable basis, it means on a durable in time, and that stays forever, I hope, we do that also sustainably, and we leave no one behind, and we don't do that at the expense of our environment. So we are having multiple policies on the environmental front and on the sustainable development front that we can delve into the details, but there's no contradiction because we call our national strategy for sustainable development the mother of all strategies in Morocco.
Right. There are two big items on the agenda. This drive to develop the economy, the Sustainable Development Plan, and also being that critical, important energy hub for Europe and the bridge between Africa and Europe. So again, I ask you, how do you balance the two?
Well, we balance it, and
resources are not. Resources will be limited at the end of the day at some point. No.
Resources are limited, and that's why efficiency of resources is the second key pillar of our strategy. We cannot do what we are doing if we don't believe, think, breathe every day efficiency of resources, and we don't transform our institutions to breathe, think, and live in a very efficient, constrained world and a cost-competitive world. So when I mentioned the concept of an electrostate, it's a whole mentality that comes with it. It means that you are frugal. It means that you actually, when you produce lithium batteries, lithium or cobalt or iron ore, that you do that in a very sustainable manner. I would like to point to the Marrakesh Declaration, our ESG framework that we launched for African countries by African countries. I had more than 40 African countries in Marrakesh back in November, and I had a few of my mining ministers, African mining ministers fellows from Africa, agreeing that the ESG framework for the mining sector cannot be written in Geneva or New York. The ESG framework for the mining sector for Africa, if the world is serious about the digital, if everyone wants to continue to consume social media and artificial intelligence as we do at this pace, well, we really have to ensure that those mining projects are being financed sustainably in Africa, but also are being driven and extracted, and all those extractive industries are being processed also properly and certified properly in Africa. So that initiative is also, will tell you that even in that front, things are changing. And I'm sorry, Siba, I don't like to use the word hub, because it actually relates to the other question of you can only be a transit country or exporter. That's not what we are looking at right now. The international value chains have been disrupted, have been reconfigured, have been shortened. And in this space of energy and digital transitions, you have you have some countries that are concentrating 70%, 80% of the value chain in some technologies. If I look at wind, solar, some parts of the batteries as well, artificial intelligence, etc. So the concept of a corridor connecting, where you would have multiple flows but you need to have proper infrastructure, you need to have future-proof infrastructure, and that's why the role, for example, of green hydrogen is very important. Right. You need to have institutions there, you need to have stable policy to become that corridor of the 21st century. The corridor of the 21st century is different from the corridor of the 20th century. We are not in an export-oriented only or transit-oriented only of molecules, right, of oil and gas, like we were in the 20th century. The world has changed, and I'm really hoping that we will have some technology disruptions over the next couple of years that will prove that.
On green hydrogen, whilst Morocco has some great resources in solar and wind, water is scarce, and that is much needed in the development of green hydrogen. So how do you get over that, and how do you make the cost? How do you reduce the cost when water is scarce?
I don't think water is the main issue when it comes to the development of green hydrogen. I've already been on the record on that. First, as I said, we try to do everything efficiently. There are some other more mature industries in Morocco that were prevented because of water inefficiencies or the bad utilization of water resources. And I don't want to point at specific sectors. So before we reach the discussion about water utilization, and we are doing everything we can on the green hydrogen offer, the way we have devised it is that it's a proper governance framework, very transparent. We accompany investors throughout their testing phases, so until they reach final investment decisions, and we go hand in hand with the investors on that front. We give them access to land for 6 months, renewable, and all that process is also part of the capacity building. Right. Between the public and the private sector, because we are all learning. Again, Morocco has 15 years of experience in managing technology risks in the energy transition space. We're the first developers of a large CSP plant, concentrated solar power, at the time when not many countries were getting to that front. So we have learned the lessons of managing technology risks. And the same thing is happening in the green hydrogen space. We want to try, we want to test, but not at the expense of taxpayer money, not at the expense of public investments in schools and healthcare, in the social paradigm of the country. So that's why when it comes to green hydrogen, we know exactly where we are going. And I said it on the record as well, the issue is not the technical configuration of the project, it's the competitiveness.
Exactly.
Because for Morocco to become that corridor, if those technologies are proven, if Morocco was to become that corridor, it has to be the last man standing. It has to be the most competitive. It's important. And otherwise, there's no point.
Yeah, you're competing against some really big economies as well around the world, whether it is Australia, whether it is Saudi Arabia, nearer to home.
And South America as well, that has a few connecting countries that have some of the ingredients that Morocco has. But I believe that now we have in Morocco that alignment of the stars that didn't come by coincidence. It was a long-term endeavor and effort to say, well, of course, we have an exceptional potential in solar and wind, but we have also invested years in building our infrastructure, including our connectivity with international markets. We have spent years in mutualizing our infrastructure, including desalination, to decrease costs in those ventures. So all that it's not a coincidence, and we are here today where we can capitalize on
How much
those
is that?
aspects.
How much of that are you willing for it to be foreign investment, foreign private investments, and how much do you want to retain for the state?
It's a totally different world than the 60s or the 70s, where some countries were nationalizing their oil and gas sectors. Here we are talking about technologies, and I talk a lot about artificial intelligence, not because it's a buzzword, it's because I think it's going to be a real disruption in the management of grids, of electricity grids, and the management of the energy sector as a whole, because it is increasing efficiency and cost competitiveness very, very, very in a very fast pace. And when it comes to renewables, it might actually solve one of the main issues that we have with renewables, which is intermittency. So if you can have at the nanoseconds your system operator that will become artificial intelligence, knowing and preventing actually when you have a cloud passing by or a change in the wind pattern, and managing the electricity system at the nanosecond, that will definitely decrease the costs of renewables and renewables dispatch in the grids.
And that will further ensure the long-term viability of the green hydrogen project, which seems to be a little bit, has some skeptics because of the higher cost of renewable energy at the moment.
I think, again, skepticism is usually quite simplistic because, and that's something that we try to relay as Morocco in our nationally determined contribution. You know, the NDC 3.0 that we submitted on time, on schedule, and it's more ambitious just before COP Belen. In that NDC, there are a couple of innovations, apart from the fact that it's more ambitious than before, with a 53% reduction in our greenhouse gas emissions and all that. One of the innovations that we put in, and I'm hoping that your audience will go and read our NDC, is to say very bluntly to the world, no country can decarbonize or go as fast or faster than its harder to abate sector. Mm-hmm. Because the hardest to abate sector in any country is the one at the end of the day investing or not in its own decarbonization, be it electricity, if you are heavily dependent on fossil fuels or coal, be it steel, cement, all those hard, or shipping. Shipping is another one. Mm. So in our NDC, we linked actually international climate finance and private finance to rates of returns in the hardest to abate sectors in Morocco. That was one innovation. I don't want to delve into the details to the other second key innovation that I'm very proud of the team that put that, is to link international climate finance to the regions, the territories. We have 12 regions in Morocco, including the 6 regions that are the richest when it comes to wind, solar, infrastructure, and mining, metals and minerals. 3 of them are the southern provinces. So for us, it's very important that we do this in a very coherent manner. And that's why I'm also very proud of our NDC in that regard, because we were able to demonstrate to the world that we probably need to change a little bit. We're all for multilateralism, and we really want multilateralism to reinvent itself. Okay. But to reinvent itself, we have to touch the right way to finance our adaptation and mitigation projects. So this is a long answer to your earlier question, whether it's private capital or 100% government capital. It's public-private partnerships.
Sure. So what's the next step now, given the success that you've arrived at? Is it to scale? Is it scaling renewables, or is it making them more competitive?
Yeah, I mean, very concretely, we have in our new investment plan between now and 2030, we have roughly $12 billion of investments, adding 15 gigawatts of electricity capacity. 80% of that is renewables. The most important thing here, Siba, is to understand the inflection points that we have in our energy investments. Morocco, is following also how the world is changing. I mean, we had an Asian crisis. We had the fall of the Berlin Wall in 90s. We had the Asian crisis at the end of the 90s, 98. We had the Iraqi war in 2003. We had the financial crisis in 2008. We had the Arab Spring in 2011. Reform of the constitution. The investment plans were shaken at the time and changed. When we came in 2021, when the new government was appointed by His Majesty in 2021, apart from the fact that we're coming off from COVID and there were many challenges that we were facing, like other governments in the world, we also had to deal with the fact that we had underinvested, like other countries, in electricity grids. Mm-hmm. So one of the first things that I started to do with the instructions of His Majesty is to say, well, first we have to push hard on our regulatory framework. So we were able to really pass all the laws that we have to pass, particularly on renewables, to enable transparency in tariffs, in access to the grid, etc., and multiplying the pace of investments by 3 annually in the renewable energy space in generation, but by 5 annually in the grids. So you see a first inflection point that happened in 2023. Mm. In 2026, I'm hoping there will be a second inflection point, because we are seeing now, we are reaping the fruits of investments in the grids, which are very important and key for the deployment of renewables. Mm. And I think there will be another inflection point in the next few years. I'm going to tell you when that will happen.
I will be here. I will be listening. How much do you need? Energy transition is capital intensive. How much would you put the number at?
I disagree with you, Siba. I disagree with you when you say that energy is capital intensive and energy transition is capital intensive.
Convince me.
Well, breathing, working is capital intensive. Of course, development is capital intensive. In order to have a country functioning, you need energy. So, of course, yes, energy is capital intensive. However, the most important part of the cost when it comes to renewables, and that's one of the disruptions when it comes to financing this energy transition, is the fact that the operating costs are nearly not zero, but very low. Because once you have amortized your capital cost, the rest of the time you are relying on maintenance and the sun and the wind to produce your electricity. So compared to other sources of electricity like nuclear or coal or gas-fired power plants were probably the most nimble to finance because they had that equilibrium between capex and opex. Except when you have a couple of wars that will totally increase your gas prices or have a huge volatility when it comes to gas prices. I am not, I would say, I'm not lobbying for a totally green world. That's not my point. My point is to say is if we want to continue to live, to breathe, clean air, Morocco has faced potentially the worst floods. Yes, definitely the worst floods in its history. We had a couple of very, very dangerous floods back in 2009, but these were worse. We had more than 150% rainfall.
The recent ones.
The recent ones.
Yes.
And that after 7 years of drought. So that changes or confirms basically the fact that if you want to continue to mitigate and adapt to one of the main issues that we are facing, regardless of our ideology, regardless of whether we believe in climate change or not, it's very important to take into account the celerity of those changes, the violence of those events, because you cannot plan that properly in the previous world. You cannot plan that without access to competitive technology, including artificial intelligence, and competitive finance. It's very important to...